In this video, I'm going to look at a Sony EVS5000. This is more of a salvage mission than a repair because this machine works, but the problem with all of these Sony Hi 8 home decks, and it's a chronic issue, and I'll show you what the problem is. And I've got two machines. I've got this, which is my EVS5000, and I've got an EVS7000. And both have the same problem. And that's one of the gears on the take-up side has got a crack in it, which causes it to eat the tape. It's the take-up hub. The part is no longer available from Sony, and it has not been available in a long time, but it was a disaster. Like, I've changed, the hub on this one's been changed once, and the hub on my EVS7000 was changed twice. It failed both times. Then I took the good hub out of this one, and I put it in the EVS7000, and that EVS7000, it has now failed again. It is a real, just a joke. I'll show you the part here. You can see the problem right here. This gear has a crack in it. You see that? That problem, what happens when that gear breaks, is that as the hub is rotating, it'll stick at that crack, and it'll cause the tape spool to stop turning. And once that happens, you end up with an eaten tape. What I'm not sure is whether the hub is the same on the supply and the take-up. So what this exercise is going to be is I'm going to just take this mechanism apart and see whether the lower gear is the same. I don't think it is, because I think I probably would have thought of this in the past if it was. Because I don't think this one's cracked on the supply side. I'm turning this around and I don't see any cracks in this one. But what I don't know is whether the supply side is the same, the base is the same physical gear. If the base is the same physical gear as the take-up side, I should be able to take the good one from here and put it into my EVS7000 on the take-up side where it is cracked, and get a good machine working out of it. Now, as this thing sits, my EVS7000, I can actually play a tape, and it will play fine. But if I go into fast forward or search forward, it'll eat the tape. That's the problem. And the EVS7000, for those who are not aware of what that machine was, it's the big brother to this one. It's the same mechanism, but it also featured the PCM digital audio sound. Now, 8mm and Hi 8 had the ability to not only record the AFM analog hi-fi soundtrack, but it also had a reserved area called the PCM digital stereo track. And that allowed you to dub digital stereo music in after you'd recorded a tape. And on playback, you could pick either the AFM stereo or the digital PCM stereo, or vice versa, or a mix of both. So it really was a good deck, and I used to use the EVS7000 as an actual recorder when I was, back in the day when I was doing analog recordings. This is before we got into computer editing, but I was actually using the EVS7000 as a recorder because I could assemble edit my tapes in Hi 8 on the EVS7000, and then I could go back and I could dub in music. This was weddings that I was using these for. I could dub in music in stereo where I wanted the music, and then on playback, when I was copying the tape over to VHS, I would just have it in mix mode, and then when whenever I wanted the music to fade up, I could actually adjust the mix level on playback. Beautiful machine, but I never used it that much because the stupid gear broke on it. I say that 7000, it's been replaced. It'd be on the fourth one. Just a piece of shit. Sorry, my French, but Sony should have done better than that. And what causes the problem is this plastic gear. Well, we'll take it apart, but it actually has a metal component to it. Now my camera's not going to focus. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. It can do it. It has a metal component to this. And what happens is with heating and cooling is the metal core in the middle expands and it pushes on the gear and cracks it. The failure rate on this was 120%. Okay? every one of these bloody things failed out in the field. Every one, and all the replacements all failed too, and they never got it right, and they never fixed it. And this is one of the things that really pissed me off with Sony, because these were $3,000 and up decks, and none of them lasted. It's just a joke. Anyway, let me get this other one out. I want to inspect it and see whether the base is the same assembly as the take-up, and if it is, I'll be getting my EVS7000 apart and we'll swap it out. So to access this, I'm just going to pop the front cover off somehow. It's been a long time since I've worked on one of these machines, I'll tell you that. I have cats coming in here. I can hear the door opening. Okay, now I have to unplug. Oh, it's already unplugged. Okay, I guess I didn't plug it in the last time I put it back together because I knew I'd be taking it apart again. I'm going to lift out the cassette housing. So I get my little microscopic screwdriver here to remove a couple of small screws in the back here. And I believe this should just, oh, there's one more down here. There's 3 screws to lift out the basket. And then that just lifts out. So this is the one I'm interested in down here. So to get at these, I have to take out this little bracket. So lift out those 2 screws. I'll lift out this little bracket. And as you can see the big crack on this, but what I'm interested in is on this side, so I'm just going to release the tension band. I'll just take out this screw here. I'm just going to mark with a marking pen where the for the tension. So I'm just going to mark this so that I know where it goes. There we go. That way I can put the tension band back exactly where it came from. And now I can lift this off, lift the tension band out of the way, and I should be able to lift the table out. This is the table. And what I'm curious about is this the same? See, there's a magnet on here. This is why these things break, because of this metal disc. What the magnet is there for is this provides the torque limiting so that the tape doesn't get all buggered up. That allows it to slip. But when this metal disc down here expands, it expands at a different rate than the plastic, and it causes the plastic to crack. So what I'm curious is that base assembly the same as on this side? So I'm just going to take that one off and lift this gear out, because if the base assembly is the same, then I'll be able to salvage the gear from the other one for my EVS7000, and then I'll go get that and we'll get that in here. Just want to see if this is the same. It may or may not be the same material. So there's the gears separated. Oh, you know what? I think they might be the same. I think they might be the same. Here's the other one, the take-up side. Are they the same or are they not? No, they're not. Damn. I'm looking at the center here. Unless this is a washer that comes off here. They look the same on the outside, but if we look in the middle here, you can see the one that's got the crack on it. This hub is a different size. And I don't know whether this is just a washer that fits on here or whether it's actually part of the gear. So of course the $64,000 question is, why not just take the good rewind entire hub assembly and put it onto the take-up side? I mean, after all, we don't need the brake band around here, even though this one's got a little extra slot here for the brake band. We don't need the brake band on the take-up side. It doesn't use one. So why won't it fit? Well, let's just see if it will. I think it probably will fit. I think the differences between the two of them, though, is there. See, it fits on there quite nicely. The differences between the two of them are the actual magnets are a different size, and the torque is going to be a little bit higher. So in the play mode, this one's going to have a little more take-up torque than the original, and I can certainly feel it when I hold the hub and turn the actual gear itself. Right, there's more tension, a little bit more tension on this one, but it may be okay. So why don't I try that? I'll go get the EVS7000 and I'll just try putting the supply side hub from this machine onto the take-up on the EVS7000 and see if it works, because that may be a solution, and it may help someone else that has one of these or has a couple of machines where they got a hub that's good on one side and another hub that's broken, because these cracked gears, there's no way to fix these things. Even trying to get one 3D printed, so starting to crack in a second place. The only success I've had with trying to get these gears working is to try and push them together, and while pushing them together, touch the cracked portion here with a hot soldering iron and try to fuse the plastic back together to hold the teeth together. And it works for a while, but it's not a permanent, by any means, fix. It's a way of getting a machine that was eating a tape completely into a machine that will play a tape, but it won't fast forward a tape without chewing it up. I'm going to go grab my EVS7000. We'll try just putting this hub on the take-up side and see if it'll actually work. Might be a good experiment here. So here's my EVS7000, complete with no screws in the cover, because my production machines I never kept screws in because I would take them apart to clean them on a regular basis. So let's pull the face off this thing. This one's got that whole front door, so I'm just gonna try and, I'm not gonna pull this thing all apart. I just want to get this thing apart enough that I can get the mechanism out. As you can see, the mechanism, it's exactly the same. And you'll see this one here. Let's see the cracks on this one. I don't think there's any cracks on the supply side on this one either. But this one here definitely has a crack in it. You can see this one, I actually repaired this one with a soldering iron. You can see this one here? This one here has been fused to make it work. And it does work. It just doesn't fast forward. If I go to fast forward or search, it'll start chewing up the tape. It does it because it stops turning and then the tape spills. So what we'll try on this is we'll just try removing this one. They're easy to change. You just take out a couple of screws and it just lifts right out. So here's the hub that I see how I fused it, right? That's the way to try and get these things working, is to try and get the camera to focus on it. But there's the where it cracked, right? And there's where I kind of fused it together. And it does work. It works fine, other than if I go into forward search, because the gap is a little bit wider on this one tooth where it cracked. If I go into forward search, it'll stop. The pendulum gear here will actually disengage, and tape will spill all over the place. So let me get that other hub, and we'll just pop this one in place here. Put the bracket in, see if it'll fit. Looks like it's going in place. Cool, this actually might work. Wouldn't that be something? Turns okay. We'll put the cassette housing assembly back in place. Put a couple screws in it, and then we'll get an old tape that I don't care if it gets chewed up, and we'll try it and see whether it works. Okay, that is back there. One more screw for the shielding. And now we'll load our tape and see if it works. So the moment of truth, I have a tape that I can't even show you. When I was younger, we used to take the video camera to our wild parties with our wild and crazy friends and get all kinds of incriminating evidence. But I'm sworn to secrecy. I can never show this tape to anybody. But it's one that I really don't give a flying you-know-what about if it gets chewed up. So far so good. Let's see if it plays. And oh, I can show you this part. This is my old backyard. Tracking's a bit off. I can tweak that. This machine I've been using for tweaking, but hey, wow, let me see if I can tweak that tracking in a bit while I'm working on this here. Just hello, Mr. Cat. We may have a problem here. We may have a tension problem, and that might be why this won't work. Aha, you see what's happening here. Okay, yeah, we may have a problem here. This is why this won't work. I was concerned about this. If we look down here at the tape, you'll see what's going to happen. Okay, the tape's going to start to curl, I think. It's playing back perfectly now after tweaking the guide a bit. Okay, there's my cat. My old Siamese cat. This cat's been dead for like 20 years, but his name was Rambo because, well, he would attack you. Oh yes, good old Rambo. Anyway, looks like it's working. I saw a bit of crunching at the beginning, but the tape may have had damage to it, and that might be why. It was. It looked like it was riding down the pinch roller, but it may have been just damage already on the tape that did that. Because you know what? Things working. And this is not a PCM. This was just would have been a cat's yawning there. It's too funny. I'll have to show this tape to my kids because they remember this cat. This cat was, I guess this cat died about 14 or so years ago. And they were both like really little. Oh, it's somebody's wedding that I did. Okay, now I gotta turn the sound down. This is the part I definitely can't show you. But some old friends on here in various states of inebriation. So it's blackmail material is what this is. But anyway, let's just watch what's happening with this tape here, because I think that we're not going to have it success. I have a feeling that this thing, there we go. There's what I was concerned about right there. That's exactly what I was concerned about with this other hub having a slightly different size magnet on it. It's going to cause it to start riding down the pinch roller here. And if I go into fast forward, what's going to happen? And see, there we go. See, we just kind of buggered up the tape there. So that is not going to work. That is why you need the right hub, because I thought it might be an issue, but I was kind of brainstorming there thinking, is there something I can do? Can we salvage a hub out of one that's good? And now we know that the answer to that is a definite no. We cannot take a supply hub from a machine that's good and put it on the take-up side. It will not work because the tension for the supply side and the take-up side are different. So let me just put the original one back in here. Make sure that this machine continues to work. I don't use this machine at all, other than when I get when I've got high 8 tapes that have a PCM soundtrack. I haul it out. I don't fast forward or do anything. I just play the tape, get my copy off of it, or if I have a tape that the alignment is out, I'll tweak the guides to, like if a camera, the alignment has gone out on a camera and I need to make a recovery, I tweak the guides to get a good recovery and make a copy of the tape. But I don't fast forward it or rewind it. I can rewind it on here, that's not a problem, but I don't fast forward the tape because the hub is broken. So let's put the other hub back in and consider this experiment a failure. Well, I guess it's not really a failure, right? It just confirms what I was thinking was going to happen, and at least this will save other people who may have had the same idea from attempting to do this, thinking that hey, we can kill two birds with one stone and get a good machine out of a bad one. It's too bad it didn't work. I give Sony the big raised middle finger over this design because this was a nightmare. And then the fact that they abandoned everybody with these machines, very expensive machines. These were sold to their most loyal of their 8mm customers. People that spent a lot of money on cameras such as the EVS7000 with its PCM soundtrack, and the EVS which was the 3-chip, almost broadcast quality, a high 8, and even the EVW300, which was the broadcast quality high 8 camera that Sony had. The only thing was the EVW300, this has got time code on it as well, but it used the RC time code standard, rewritable consumer time code, whereas the EVW300 used the broadcast industrial time code. So this machine could not read the time code that was written by an EVW300, but you could take a tape from an EVW300, put it in this machine, and rewrite the time code as RC time code format, and then you could use the machine for frame accurate editing because it had time code on the tape. But as I say, Sony kind of alienated all of their consumers and professionals that bought this machine by not continuing the parts availability, even though they knew darn well that the failure rate on these parts was 100%. All they had to do was give us enough parts to keep these machines running, but they didn't. And the last time I tried to order parts for this machine was about, I guess, I'm going to say 7 years ago. I tried to get a replacement gear, and I was told, sorry, no parts. Okay, I'll open up the control panel again. See, this is really cool. I have this control panel that slides out. So say the machine will play with this gear that's got a crack in it, and it'll play fine. We won't have any eating of the tape at all. But what will happen is you'll hear it. If I go into fast forward, you're going to hear it going tick, 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 and then it'll spill. So watch. This is what happens with the cracked gear. I can search, no problem. But if I go into the really high speed search, okay, now it's not doing it. Oh, this is a wedding on here. It's a friend of mine's first wedding that I filmed. I taped over it and put some party stuff on there for a few minutes because this friend that is on here, this was his horrible first wife that it didn't last very long, let's just say. So I didn't keep the tape. I erased it because I didn't want to remind him of a mistake that he made. But I mean, it's working. But if I go into full fast forward, it's gonna make a liar out of me. Normally what happens is that the take-up spool will stop turning, and then I'll end up with tape spilling all over here, but it's not doing it for me now, so maybe I lucked out when I put it back together and it's going to hold for a while. Anyway, that's how it's supposed to run, but when those gears get a crack in them, you hear that tick, 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 tick. This probably has PCM sound on it too, I'm thinking. I'm just looking to see whether it has PCM audio. Yep, it does. So this tape would have been recorded, I'm thinking this tape would have been recorded. I won't show any close-ups here, but this would have been recorded probably with either a CCD EV5000 or an EVW300, one of the two. I forget which one I had at the time. I've had too many cameras. But that's the EVS7000. Real nice machine, beautiful machine. Best high deck that Sony made. It has a digital time-based corrector in it. It has digital noise reduction. I have a little modification back here. What that modification was for is for sound editing. What I can do with this, if I flip the switch on, now if I go ahead and pause, okay, now I have sound in pause. So I can search. That's a modification that I did, by the way. Love my wiring. I can search with sound. So we'll just turn it up a bit so you can hear. Because normally the machine mutes the sound, right? When you're in pause or fast forward or rewind. This was shot with a CCD V5000. I know that because I just saw date and time come up. I timestamped it. I timestamped it when I was making the recording, and my EVW300 didn't have the capability of doing that. It was just a professional camera. This one here was the consumer, but still looked very good. But as you can hear, and if I flip that switch back off, so all that was a mute disable. So normally when you put the machine in pause or you're searching forward or backwards, you mute the audio. But for editing, when you're using it as a playback machine, which is what I use this as, because I had cameras that recorded in digital audio. My EVW300 was one that recorded in digital audio, and I needed the PCM playback for the soundtrack off of it. I wanted to be able to search with sound. So I figured out how to do it. My crude wiring here. I got the schematic out, and I figured out that, I'll show you where I attached it to here. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but you might be interested in this. That wire goes right down there. You can see it. Soldered onto that chip down there, and all it does is it grounds out the muting pin to kill the muting circuit. The other side of that wire is goes to a switch, and it just solder it down to the ground. And when you ground that pin out, you have sound in pause. And it's just, this is off the AFN, so if I actually tap the head, you'll hear the sound will change. Right, you hear the pitch change. Here, well, let's give it some wow and flutter. High-speed searching. Stop, but when I go into full rewind, of course it doesn't have any sound on it doing that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the look at this EVS7000, and gee, luck of the draw, I put this thing back together and it's not eating tapes now. I'll count my blessings as long as it lasts, because that take-up spool gear there is a disaster. Okay, I'll just get this apart. I'm going to put the other one back together. I'll keep recording as I put the other machine back together, just so you guys can see it go back together as well. So there's the EVS7000. Close up the I like the display on this thing here. Don't know if it shows up well on camera, but it has a nice fluorescent display. Put the tape back in there. You guys can take a look at this. I don't know if there's time code on this tape. There might be. I'm pretty sure there probably is. So if certainly the stuff recorded on the V5000, I believe it had time code. Let's just see if there's time code on here. Hours, minutes, seconds. Where's my time select? My time display select here is it's been so long since I've used this machine I can't even find my display button on it anymore. Counter select, there we go. Now there's no time code on here, but then there's nothing on the tape at this particular point. Cleaning the heads. There we go. No, this tape doesn't have time code, otherwise it would show up here hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. But if I press pause on here, there should be a button on here to write time code. Oh, there it is, right there, button, right in front of me, right in front of my nose, right? Time code right. You press time code right, your release, and it will start writing time code. And there it goes. Now it's writing time code to the tape. So, and I'll actually play the tape back while it's writing time code. It'll write, so you have to play the tape back in real-time speed. But now I'm putting time code onto this tape. I was able to show you guys that because there was nobody in there, right? I don't want to violate anybody's privacy in this this ceremony, because they're all my friends. They'd be probably pissed if I put them on YouTube. But there's my old pal that I worked on the Chuck Berry concert with. Worked at the same station as me. He was the guy on the stage camera. He was at this wedding. So I write time code for 47 seconds, right? When I'm done, stop it. Okay, now when I play it back, you'll see the time code will, if I rewind it back to before the time code, you'll see that there's nothing here now. And once I get to the point where I started writing the time code will play back. There you go. Now that's permanently recorded onto the tape. And you can use it for frame accurate editing. So when this deck was used in, well, it actually had an edit controller built in. So you could assemble, just like the SLHF1000, the beta decks, this was the same, but it was even more accurate. You could plug in another device through the Control L cable, and if it was another deck that was time code enabled, in other words, if you had two EVS7000s, you could edit, and you could assemble, edit, I think it was 8 programs, and you could pick from your time code any random scene, and it would take control over Control L, what Sony called rank interface. It would take control of the slave deck, and that's what I used to use. That's actually what I used to use the EVS5000, the other one that's all in pieces over here that I got to put back together. But that's what I used to use the EVS5000 for back when I was doing analog editing. Right, I started out, my first editing package was the high band beta, the SLHF1000s, when I was editing on beta back in the 80s. And then in the 90s when Hi 8 came out, and Hi 8 had so much better picture than beta did with the metal tapes, especially the metal evaporated tape like I've got in here right now. It had a much better picture, and with the 2 decks. So I used this deck initially, and I used the EVS5000 as the recorder. So I could edit, play the tapes back on this, have the EVS5000 record my edited master. Then I took the tape out of the EVS5000, put it back in this one, wound it up to the point where I wanted to do music dubbing, would use the audio dub feature right here, press audio dub, and then I could dub in audio dub. I could dub in PCM, and when you do audio dub, this is what would show up on the screen. It would blank out the bottom portion of the picture, because the audio is actually written after the video, but it had to blank out the bottom portion of the picture so that the recording circuits kicking in to record the PCM soundtrack wouldn't disrupt the picture. So you could audio dub and then play the tape back, and on playback, I'll stop it. On playback, going back to where I think where the audio dubbing starts. On playback, it should tell me here that PCM, if I switch it to mix, now you've got a control here, right? You've got your PCM record balance control, PCM record level, so you can set your levels for, so you could fade music up and fade it out. And then on playback, you had your standard audio level, and you could mix the 2 of them together on playback. So you could mix between, you'd have your PCM and you'd have it in mix, and then you could mix, you could select the standard hi-fi audio, you could select the PCM hi-fi audio, or you could select mix. So if you're selected mix, wherever there was music, it would fade up in the background. And when I press play here, it should come up, it should light up when there's PCM. If I'm not mistaken, there should be an indicator on here. Yeah, PCM, there it is. So if I rewind the tape back a bit, okay, I don't think there's PCM here. Okay, here we go. If you look here, there's no PCM sound on this tape yet. But when I get to the point, it's got hi-fi stereo, time-based correctors on. When I get to the point, as the tape plays, to where I put PCM sound, you will see this light light up. There it goes. That's the point where the audio dubbing started. Very cool. The sound quality off the PCM on this was comparable to DAT tape in the LP speed. So it was 32 kilohertz sampling rate, and I think it was 12-bit linear encoding. So it was basically flat frequency response from 20 hertz to, I think it's 15 kilohertz, 15 or 16 kilohertz, somewhere in there. But it wasn't full CD quality, but there, now see, the dubbing ended. It wasn't full CD quality, but it was DAT quality in the LP speed. Very good sound. And I've got lots of tapes that I actually recorded audio on and just used it as an audio recorder. Stuff that I had video on, and I went back and I dubbed audio in and just, you know, put music on and just used it as an audio tape recorder because the quality was there, and you could hide stuff. If you gave the tape to somebody who had a regular camcorder, they played it back, that audio they never heard. They would only hear the AFM soundtrack. So it was really quite the system. Anyway, that's a little bit of history about this machine. It's working. I'm happy. Don't know what I did. Just taking it apart and massaging that gear a bit seems to have stopped it from eating. Anyway, let's get the other machine back together. So once again, I'll put this good supply hub back into this deck. Just have to get the brake band in place. There we go. You notice I marked it, so I knew exactly where it went back. If you're ever taking apart mechanisms and you don't know where things go, it's always a good idea just to take a felt tip and mark gears and mark things so that when you put them back together, you know exactly the way they came apart. It saves lots of headaches after the fact. Even though this machine is not going back into service, it can't go back into service because the take-up reel on this one is in pretty bad shape. So I'll put the front cover back on. I'm not going to bother connecting the controls. You see, this one's got similar controls, right, to the EVS7000. It's got the jog shuttle dial. Very similar, so you could edit very accurately because this one here also has time code. As you can see, it's got the time code right button on it. This one does not have the PCM sound, but everything else was identical. I'm not going to bother connecting this because, as I say, I'm not putting this machine back into service. This is just my parts wrecker. I mean, if I really wanted to be nasty, I could sell it to some sucker on eBay. Not tell them that the tape hubs are shot, because I go bad on all of them, but hey, I'm not that bad. Anyway, that's this machine back together. But I definitely think that maybe the temperature rise when these machines, because I know in my setup I had the EVS7000 was on the bottom and the 5000 sat on top of it. So I think maybe a lot of these parts broke because when they were in use they'd get hot and then you shut them off and you turn them on, and I think probably just the temperature fluctuations from getting hot when they're on and not when they're off caused that metal to expand and crack the gear. Anyway, that's what I think happened on these, but unless everybody overheated them, I can't see it being, just in my case, it overheating, because I've seen so many of them that they failed out in the field. They were bad. They were bad design, but I think stacking them up in equipment racks and so forth probably didn't do them any good. Anyway, enough about this. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.